I'm Riley Dawson, 29 years old, and last June on my wedding day, my own mother took the microphone in front of 200 guests and said something I will never forget. Denise Caldwell told them I was a liar. She told them I trapped my husband. She said everything about me, everything they believed about me, was fake. 200 people went silent, and the air felt suddenly too thin. My bouquet was still in my hand, and my makeup was not even smudged yet. But inside I was breaking apart. Denise Caldwell spoke like she was saving the room, and she stared at me like I was a problem to erase. What she did not know was that Jordan Blake had spent 6 months quietly watching her patterns and checking details that never made sense. He did not do it out of jealousy. He did it because too many things felt off for too many years. And what he found, forged documents, stolen savings, and recorded confessions, would collapse a decade of lies in under 5 minutes. That night, 6 people walked out of the reception, crying for themselves, not for Denise Caldwell. They realized they had been used too, and they finally understood why. Before I tell you the whole story, I want to say this plainly. If you have ever been controlled by family, you will recognize the signs. If this hits close to home, stay with me. Now let me take you back 3 years, to the night I first realized something in my family was deeply wrong. I grew up believing I was bad with money, not careless on purpose, just somehow always behind. Denise Caldwell reinforced that story every time I asked a question and every time I tried to learn. She said I was not responsible. She said I needed guidance. She said I would fail without her. I believed her longer than I should have because she was my mother and because she sounded so sure. But that night, one small detail cracked the picture, and once it cracked, I could not unsee it. Let me take you back 3 years, to the night I realized something was wrong. I grew up believing I was bad with money because Denise Caldwell said so. She said it often. She said it with certainty, and I absorbed it. From the first allowance I ever held, she controlled every cent in our home. Birthday money from relatives, she took it and promised to keep it safe. Summer job paychecks at 16, she demanded them, and said I would waste it. I believed her the way children believe gravity, without proof, without question. When I was 17, my grandfather Arthur Langford passed away, quiet and steady, smelling like cedar and coffee. He used to slip me $10 bills when my mother was not looking. After the funeral, I asked Denise Caldwell if he left anything for me, or for Haley Dawson. She did not pause. She did not blink. She answered too fast. She said he barely left enough to cover funeral costs, and he was not wealthy. I never saw a will. I never saw paperwork, and I did not ask again. Denise Caldwell had a way of making questions feel like attacks. If I pushed, she would cry, then say I was accusing her after all she sacrificed. That sentence ended everything, and I learned to swallow my curiosity. I carried that training into adulthood, and I did not realize it was training. I thought it was love, but it was control, dressed as protection. At 22, I moved out, rented a studio the size of a parking space. I started freelancing as a graphic designer and worked long days. I tracked every purchase in a paper notebook because I feared my own mistakes. Even with that discipline, my bank account never added up. Money would appear, then vanish. Deposits I did not recognize, withdrawals I could not explain. I called the bank, got transferred again and again, then gave up tired. I repeated what Denise Caldwell had always told me, that I was not good with money. I was 29 before I learned the truth. I was not careless. Someone was taking it, and I was being taught to blame myself. Denise Caldwell had a pattern, and it was simple. If I asked about money, she did not answer. She performed pain. She cried. She brought up sacrifice. She accused me of being cruel. It was her skeleton key. One turn, and the door was shut. My parents divorced when I was 8, and my father drifted away. Denise Caldwell became the center of everything, and she liked it that way. She told relatives I was difficult. She told friends I was ungrateful. She even told a neighbor I stole $40 from her purse when I was 11. I did not steal anything, but the label stuck anyway. Meanwhile, Haley Dawson received a softer version of motherhood. Denise Caldwell helped with tuition, helped with a used car, helped with interview clothes. When I asked why I never got the same help, Denise Caldwell said Haley was responsible, and I was not. I swallowed that for years, like medicine I thought I deserved. Then, about 3 months before I met Jordan Blake, Haley Dawson sent a late-night text. She asked if Denise Caldwell ever mentioned Arthur Langford Trust. And she said something felt off. She said her tuition account looked wrong, and the numbers did not match. I stared at the message for a long time, and my thumb hovered. I closed the app, set my phone down, and went to bed because I was not ready. Not yet. But 3 months later, I met someone who made me realize I had been ready all along. I met Jordan Blake on a Tuesday in a downtown cafe, quiet and half full. He sat in a corner booth, laptop open, papers spread out like a case file. I was there for a client who never showed up, so I ordered coffee and waited. Jordan Blake noticed me looking, smiled, and apologized for the mess. He said numbers do not like to behave. And I laughed. He invited me to sit closer so he did not have to shout. And I did. No fireworks, no dramatic moment. Just a kind voice and careful eyes. Jordan Blake was 32, a forensic accountant at an independent auditing firm. He told me his job was to follow money that did not want to be found. I thought it was interesting, and I did not yet know it would matter. As weeks became months, he noticed things others missed. He said, "I budget everything, and that does not match the story that I am bad with money." I tried to shrug it off, but he kept looking at the pattern, patient and exact. He said, "You do not live like someone who wastes money. You live like someone who never has enough." And he said he did not understand why. Jordan Blake never accused Denise Caldwell right away. He simply asked careful questions and listened to how I answered. When I told him I was bad with money, he asked for examples, and my examples did not match my habits. I showed him my notebook, receipts taped in, categories marked, every dollar tracked. He said, "This is not carelessness. This is fear." He asked if I ever checked my credit report, and I said I had not, because Denise Caldwell always said it was complicated. Jordan Blake offered to help me look, not as a savior, but as a professional who follows facts. We pulled my report, and there it was, small accounts I did not recognize, old inquiries, and a credit card I never opened. My throat tightened, and my skin went cold. Jordan Blake did not panic. He stayed calm, and that calm kept me from falling apart. He asked if Denise Caldwell had access to my documents, my social security number, my birth certificate. I said yes. She kept everything in a folder, and she said she was protecting me. Jordan Blake nodded once, like a puzzle piece clicked. He said, "We should do this step by step," and he wrote a list. Freeze credit, change passwords, pull bank statements, request account histories. He said the truth is usually boring. It is just numbers, but boring numbers can ruin lives. That night, I stared at my phone, and I almost called Denise Caldwell to demand answers. Jordan Blake asked me to wait, because confrontation without proof gives a manipulator room to spin. I hated hearing that, but I knew he was right. Denise Caldwell had a talent for turning any question into an attack, and any attack into her tears. So I stayed quiet, and we started collecting facts. A week later, Haley Dawson came to my apartment, and her hands were shaking. She said Denise Caldwell told her not to talk to me about money, and that warning alone felt like an alarm. Haley said she found an old email from Arthur Langford, attorney, and it mentioned a trust, not a small one, a real plan with rules and beneficiaries. Haley, said Denise Caldwell, told her the trust was gone because Arthur Langford left debts. Haley said she believed that until her tuition account started showing odd withdrawals, small amounts, spaced out, like someone was trying to stay invisible. Jordan Blake listened, and he asked Haley to forward everything she had. He asked her to request statements directly from the bank, not through Denise Caldwell. Haley looked terrified, but she agreed. That night, we sat around my small table, papers spread out, coffee untouched. Jordan Blake explained how fraud often works in families because trust is the best cover. He said Denise Caldwell had years of access and years of practice. He said we would need proof that a will or trust existed, and proof that the current documents were not authentic. Hearing those words felt unreal, like a story on a screen, not my life. I kept thinking, she is my mother. Then I remembered how she spoke to me, how she labeled me, how she kept me small. The memory did not feel like love. It felt like a cage. Haley whispered that she was sorry, and she said she felt guilty for getting help when I did not. I told her it was not her fault, because Denise Caldwell designed it that way. Jordan Blake said the goal was not blame. The goal was clarity, and clarity would protect both of us. For the first time, Haley and I looked at each other like sisters, not rivals. And for the first time, I realized Denise Caldwell's biggest weapon was keeping us divided. Jordan Blake started with the simplest question. What did Arthur Langford actually sign? Denise Caldwell claimed she had the will, but she never showed it. So Jordan Blake found the attorney name from Haley's email, and he called the office. The receptionist confirmed Arthur Langford had been a client, but she could not share details without authorization. Jordan Blake asked what we needed to request records, and he followed the procedure exactly. It took time, and Denise Caldwell did not like time she could not control. She called me twice that week, acting sweet, asking about wedding plans, then sliding into warnings. She said, Jordan Blake was filling my head with nonsense. She said Haley was unstable. She said the family should not dig up the past. I told her everything was fine, and I kept my voice calm. After I hung up, my hands shook, because her sweetness always came with a hook. 2 weeks later, we received a document packet, and the will Denise Caldwell described did not match the file. The signature style was different, the formatting was different, and the language was not consistent with the attorney draft. Jordan Blake pointed to the differences without drama, like a doctor reading a scan. He said this looks like a replacement, not an original. He also said there are patterns here, the kind you see when someone copies and edits, then tries to make it look official. I felt sick because it meant Denise Caldwell did not just lie. She manufactured a new reality. Haley started crying, and she covered her mouth to stay quiet. Jordan Blake asked for one more thing, the trust documentation and any account statements tied to it. He said if the trust existed, there would be trails, and money always leaves trails. That was when I realized the wedding was coming fast, and Denise Caldwell was getting bolder. She did not know Jordan Blake had already opened the file, and she did not know her performance was about to meet evidence. As the wedding got closer, Denise Caldwell started calling more often, and each call had the same pattern. She began sweet, asking about flowers, asking about seating, asking if I was eating enough. Then her voice shifted, and she warned me not to let Jordan Blake interfere with family matters. She said Arthur Langford left nothing meaningful, and she said digging would only embarrass everyone. I told her I was not digging, I was planning a wedding. She laughed lightly, but the laugh felt sharp. She said Haley Dawson was stirring drama, and she said Haley could not be trusted with facts. When I did not agree, Denise Caldwell sighed and said she worried about me. because I was so easily influenced. That word, influenced, landed like an insult. Jordan Blake heard the calls on speaker, and he did not react in the moment. Afterward, he wrote notes, dates, phrasing, and the exact claims she made. He said people who tell the truth do not fear questions, and people who lie hate documentation. I wanted to confront her, but Jordan Blake asked me to stay quiet a little longer. He said, the best way to stop a public humiliation is to remove the fog before the microphone is turned on. Haley Dawson kept sending statements she pulled directly, and each new page looked worse. Small withdrawals, frequent transfers, and an account name that did not match what Denise Caldwell described. Jordan Blake explained it like a timeline, showing how money could be moved slowly so nobody notices. I felt anger rise. Then shame tried to follow. The old shame Denise Caldwell planted. Jordan Blake said the shame does not belong to you. It belongs to the person who stole. That sentence hit hard because it was so simple. I realized Denise Caldwell had spent my whole life teaching me to carry what she did. Jordan Blake requested more records, and he did it through proper channels, no shortcuts. He pulled my banking history, my credit activity, and every linked authorization he could find. The same address appeared again and again, an address tied to Denise Caldwell. A phone number on one account matched her old number, the one she claimed she stopped using years ago. Jordan Blake also found a business account that looked clean on the surface, but it had transfers timed right after checks from relatives arrived. It was not proof by itself, but it was a pattern, and patterns lead to proof. Then Haley Dawson forwarded an email thread from Arthur Langford, attorney, and one line changed everything. It referenced a trust structure, named beneficiaries, and a scheduled review, and it was dated after Arthur Langford's illness began. Denise Caldwell had always insisted there was no trust, and now we had a professional record saying otherwise. Jordan Blake said we needed one more thing: the authentic trust documents and a comparison against the papers Denise Caldwell presented. He contacted a document examiner, and he arranged a preliminary review of signatures and formatting. I felt like I was watching a storm build because every step brought us closer to confrontation. The wedding invitations were already out, and Denise Caldwell was still acting like the perfect mother in public. She attended dress fittings, complimented me loudly, and hugged me in front of friends. But her eyes would flick toward Jordan Blake, and the warmth would vanish for half a second. She knew something was happening, even if she did not know what. One night, she sent a long text saying I was breaking her heart, and she asked me to promise I would not embarrass her at the wedding. I read it 3 times, and my chest tightened. Jordan Blake said that message is not love. It is preemptive damage control. He saved it, and he added it to the file. 2 weeks before the ceremony, Jordan Blake sat with me and Haley Dawson, and he laid out a plan. He said, we were not going to start a fight at the altar, and we were not going to shout over Denise Caldwell. He said if she tried to humiliate me publicly, we would respond with calm evidence, in the same room, at the same volume. He arranged for a screen at the reception, under the excuse of a photo slideshow. He also prepared a folder with the key documents, the attorney records, the trust references, the bank statements, and the credit report items tied to Denise Caldwell. He said we would not share everything, only what was necessary to stop the lie and protect me. Haley Dawson looked terrified, but she nodded. She said she could not keep living in confusion, and she could not keep letting Denise Caldwell control the story. I realized how much courage it took for Haley to say that, because Denise Caldwell had trained her too, just in a different way. The night before the rehearsal, Denise Caldwell called me and cried, saying she felt excluded. She said she sacrificed everything, and she asked why I was doing this to her. I did not argue. I simply said I loved her, and I needed honesty. Denise Caldwell went silent, then said honesty is exactly why she was speaking up. The next day at rehearsal, she smiled at everyone and acted like nothing happened. Jordan Blake watched her the way he watched numbers, with patience and without being fooled by performance. I walked down the aisle during rehearsal, and I felt my hands shake. Jordan Blake leaned close and said, "Tomorrow you marry me. And whatever she tries, you do not face it alone." The wedding day arrived bright and warm, and for a few hours I believed peace was possible. I was Riley Dawson, standing beside Jordan Blake, hearing vows, hearing applause, and feeling my chest loosen. 200 guests smiled, cameras flashed, and even Denise Caldwell looked calm in the front row. At the reception, music played, plates clinked, and people leaned in for speeches. I expected harmless toasts, maybe a few tears, maybe a joke about childhood. Then Denise Caldwell stood up, walked to the microphone, and the room shifted. She did not ask, she did not hesitate, she simply took the moment. She looked at the crowd like she was doing a public service. Then she looked straight at me. Her voice was smooth, practiced, and sharp. She said I was a liar. She said I had trapped Jordan Blake, and she said I married for money. The air went thin, and my cheeks burned. People froze with glasses mid-air, then whispered in confused bursts. Denise Caldwell kept speaking louder now, stacking accusations like bricks. She dragged Arthur Langford's name into it, and said he would be ashamed of me. She said I stole. I manipulated. I hid the truth. I felt Haley Dawson across the room, staring with wide, wet eyes. I wanted to disappear, but Jordan Blake squeezed my hand, steady and firm. Denise Caldwell smiled as if she had won, and she asked the guests if they wanted proof. She said she was saving Jordan Blake from a mistake. She paused, waiting for the room to turn against me. That was when Jordan Blake stepped forward, calm and controlled, and asked for the microphone. Jordan Blake did not raise his voice, and he did not insult Denise Caldwell. He thanked her for sharing her concerns. Then he said the room deserved facts. He asked the staff to start the slideshow, and the screen behind us lit up. Denise Caldwell frowned, confused for half a second, then tried to laugh it off. Jordan Blake kept going, measured and clear. He said he was a forensic accountant, and he had spent months verifying claims about money and documents. The first image was an email from Arthur Langford attorney, showing a trust structure, beneficiaries, and dates. Then came bank statements, with transfers that matched checks relatives sent, followed by withdrawals that never reached Riley Dawson. Aha. Jordan Blake pointed to the timeline, not to shame anyone, but to make it undeniable. Gasps moved through the room like wind. Denise Caldwell stepped forward and tried to interrupt, but Jordan Blake asked her to wait until he finished. He showed a comparison of documents, the will denies Caldwell described, and the attorney file that did not match it. Formatting differences, signature differences, language differences, all aligned like fingerprints. Haley Dawson stood up, trembling, and confirmed she had pulled her own statements directly. Denise Caldwell, face tightened, and she said everyone was twisting things. Jordan Blake said nothing was twisted, because numbers do not bend for feelings. Then he played a short audio clip, Denise Caldwell voice, admitting there was money, and saying she took it to protect her daughter. The room went silent. Then someone near the back started crying. Denise Caldwell gripped the microphone stand like it could hold her up, and her perfect smile finally broke. For a moment, nobody moved, because the truth had weight. Then small reactions began, a chair scraping, a sharp inhale, a whispered question. One person asked Denise Caldwell where the money went, and another asked why she lied about Arthur Langford Trust. Denise Caldwell tried to switch into tears, but the room had already seen the timeline. She said she did it for family. She said she was protecting Riley Dawson. She said Jordan Blake set her up. Jordan Blake stayed calm and said nobody set her up. She set herself up by leaving evidence. Haley Dawson stepped beside me, shaking, but steady enough to speak. She said Denise Caldwell kept her quiet for years, and she believed her until the withdrawal started. A few relatives looked at each other, faces pale, connecting old memories. 6 people stood up and walked out crying, not for Denise Caldwell, but for themselves. They realized they had sent checks, believed stories, and repeated jokes that harmed me. I stood still, bouquet forgotten, heart pounding, and I felt something strange, relief mixed with grief. Denise Caldwell looked around, searching for allies, but the room was changing by the second. Jordan Blake turned to me and asked, quietly, if I wanted to leave. I looked at the guests, then at Haley Dawson, then back at Denise Caldwell. I said, I was not leaving my own wedding, and I was not shrinking again. Denise Caldwell opened her mouth to speak, but a guest raised a hand and told her to stop. And in that moment, I understood what she feared most. She did not fear losing money. She feared losing control of the story. After the screen went dark, the reception felt like a different room. People whispered in tight circles, and the staff stood frozen, unsure what to do next. Denise Caldwell tried to regain the microphone, but nobody offered it back. She turned toward me, eyes shining with anger, and she said I had betrayed my own mother. I did not shout. I did not cry. I only said she betrayed me first, and she did it for years. Jordan Blake asked the coordinator to pause speeches, and he guided me toward a quieter corner with Haley Dawson. Haley kept saying she was sorry, and her hands would not stop shaking. I told her again, the blame belongs to the person who stole, not to the person who finally spoke. Across the room, Denise Caldwell tried to gather supporters, but people kept drifting away from her, like they could feel heat. A relative asked her directly about the trust, and she answered with vague phrases: family business, misunderstandings, complicated history. The problem was, vague words could not compete with clear documents. Someone else asked if Denise Caldwell opened accounts in my name, and she said she did what she had to do. That answer landed badly, because it sounded like a confession. Jordan Blake spoke to a few guests who looked stunned, and he explained the basics without humiliating anyone. He said, this is not gossip, this is financial abuse, and it is documented. I watched faces change as people realized how long they had played a part in Denise Caldwell's story. Some came to me quietly, apologized, and asked how they could help. I said they could stop repeating her version of me, and they could stop rewarding her behavior. The music started again, softly, because life always tries to move forward. I took one deep breath, and I decided I would stay. This was my wedding, and Denise Caldwell did not get to steal another milestone from me. Denise Caldwell tried a new performance, the one she always used: tears and heartbreak. She approached our table, voice trembling, saying she only wanted to protect Riley Dawson. She said, Arthur Langford money would have ruined me, and she said she carried the burden to keep me safe. Jordan Blake asked one calm question. If she was protecting me, why did she tell 200 guests I trapped him? Denise Caldwell blinked, and her story stalled. Haley Dawson spoke next, quiet but clear, and she said the withdrawals did not protect anyone. She said Denise Caldwell lied to her too, and she used love like a leash. Denise Caldwell turned on Haley, accusing her of being ungrateful, and the room flinched. People recognized the tone, because many had heard it before, just aimed at someone else. A guest asked Denise Caldwell to leave, and another guest backed it up. Denise Caldwell looked shocked, as if consequences were unfair. She tried to argue, but the coordinator stepped in, firm and polite, and said the couple needed peace. Denise Caldwell stood there for a second, scanning faces, looking for the old power. It was gone. She gathered her purse with stiff hands, and she walked out, heels sharp against the floor. No one chased her. When the doors closed, the whole room exhaled. I did not feel victory. I felt something closer to release. Jordan Blake kissed my forehead, and he asked if I wanted to continue the reception. I looked around at the guests who stayed, and I realized most of them were not here for Denise Caldwell. They were here for us. I nodded, and the band picked up again. People danced cautiously at first, then more freely, like they were adjusting to a world where Denise Caldwell did not control the mood. Haley Dawson held my hands and said she wanted to fix our relationship. For real. I said we would, step by step, and we would do it without fear. That night, I laughed, not because the pain was gone, but because I finally knew the truth. The morning after the wedding, my phone filled with messages, and most of them were not dramatic. They were stunned. Relatives asked for copies of the statements, and they asked how long it had been happening. A few admitted they sent money to Denise Caldwell, believing she was helping Riley Dawson. And reading that made my stomach drop, because it confirmed what Jordan Blake suspected. Haley Dawson came over early, carrying a folder of her own, and she said she wanted to do the next steps correctly. Jordan Blake made coffee, then started a checklist, like it was a case, because that is what it was. He said we would freeze credit, file fraud reports, and request full account histories from every institution tied to Denise Caldwell, address or phone number. He also said we needed to secure the authentic trust paperwork from Arthur Langford attorney, and document every discrepancy in the version Denise Caldwell claimed. I felt tired, like my body had finally noticed the weight it carried. But I also felt steady, because for once, the work was clear. Denise Caldwell texted me a long message saying I ruined her life, and she said Jordan Blake manipulated me. I did not answer. Jordan Blake saved it, and he said, silence is a boundary, not a weakness. Later that day, 6 different people called Haley Dawson, crying, saying they realized Denise Caldwell had pressured them too. They described being guilted, being shamed, being told to keep secrets for the sake of family. The stories sounded different, but the pattern was the same. I sat at my kitchen table, listening, and I understood something that made me sad. Denise Caldwell was not only stealing money, she was stealing trust, and trust is harder to replace. Jordan Blake put his hand over mine and said, we would rebuild what we could, and we would protect what remained. I looked at Haley Dawson, and she nodded like she was finally awake. For the first time, we were not divided, and Denise Caldwell could not stand in the middle anymore. Within a week, Jordan Blake helped me file reports, and we started pulling records the right way. We requested full banking histories, we froze my credit, and we documented every account tied to Denise Caldwell address. The results came back slowly, then all at once, and each page felt heavier than the last. There were withdrawals I never approved. There were transfers that matched family gifts, and there were accounts opened when I was barely an adult. Haley Dawson sat beside me as we read, and she kept whispering, I did not know. I did not know. I told her again, Denise Caldwell built this by keeping us separated. Jordan Blake stayed calm because calm keeps you accurate. He highlighted dates, matched amounts, and built a clean timeline from the first anomaly to the wedding day. We also contacted Arthur Langford attorney again, and this time the trust paperwork arrived with formal verification. The trust was real, the beneficiaries were real, and the rules were clear. Denise Caldwell had presented a different story for years, and the documents proved it. When we showed the attorney our file, he did not look surprised, he looked prepared. He said this is financial exploitation, and it is more common than people want to believe. He explained civil options, and he explained how restitution could work. I asked if facing Denise Caldwell would destroy the family. The attorney said the damage already happened, and truth is what stops it from repeating. That night I sat in silence, and I realized my wedding was not the start of this. It was the exposure. Denise Caldwell did not humiliate me because she loved me. She humiliated me because she felt control slipping. Now the control was gone, and the only thing left was accountability. Denise Caldwell tried to reach me through relatives, then through friends, then through messages that shifted tone every day. One day she sounded wounded, saying she missed her daughter. The next day she sounded furious, saying I was greedy. Then she sent a message claiming she did it to protect me, because money would have ruined me. Jordan Blake said, "The pattern is manipulation," and he told me not to respond. Haley Dawson received her own messages, and Denise Caldwell tried a different hook with her. She promised help, then threatened to cut her off, then cried about sacrifice. Haley finally said she was done, and she blocked her. Watching Haley choose that boundary made me proud, and it also made me sad, because it should not be this hard to be a daughter. In public, Denise Caldwell started telling a softer lie that there was a misunderstanding and that Jordan Blake was turning the family against her. In private, she asked for a quiet deal, a partial repayment, and an agreement to keep it secret. I said no through the attorney because secrecy was the whole disease. When Denise Caldwell realized she could not negotiate her way out, she became unpredictable. She showed up at Haley's apartment one evening, and Haley called me shaking. Jordan Blake told Haley to call the police if she felt unsafe, and he reminded her that boundaries are real even when someone dislikes them. Denise Caldwell left before officers arrived, but the message was clear. She was not seeking reconciliation, she was seeking access. That I understood something simple. Denise Caldwell did not fear losing me. She feared losing the ability to control what people believed about me. When the civil case moved forward, more family members came forward with their own stories. An aunt admitted she sent money for my rent because Denise Caldwell said I was struggling. A cousin admitted Denise Caldwell asked her to keep secrets and framed it as loyalty. Some people cried from guilt and some from relief, because they finally had a name for what they lived with. Jordan Blake kept everything organized, and he kept emotion out of the file so the facts could stand clean. The attorney submitted evidence of the authentic Arthur Langford Trust, evidence of altered paperwork, and evidence of unauthorized transfers. Denise Caldwell responded with denial, then with excuses, then with anger, and none of it changed the records. During one meeting, the attorney played a short audio clip again. Denise Caldwell admitting there was money, and admitting she took it. Hearing it in a formal setting felt different than hearing it at my wedding. At the wedding, it was shock. In the office, it was reality. Haley Dawson sat beside me, hands clasped tight, but she did not look away. Afterward, she said she finally understood why she always felt anxious around our mother. She said love should not feel like debt. I told her she was right, and I told her we would rebuild, together, without Denise Caldwell in the middle. That night, Jordan Blake asked if I regretted exposing it publicly. I said no, because the public humiliation was Denise Caldwell's choice, not mine. I did not start the scene. I ended the lie. Months later, the civil case ended with an order that felt both heavy and relieving. Denise Caldwell was required to return what she took, and she was removed from any role that let her touch the family assets again. There was no dramatic apology, no sudden change of heart. Denise Caldwell looked smaller in the courtroom, not because she felt remorse, but because she had no stage. The judge did not care about tears, only records. The attorney explained the repayment plan and the timeline for restitution. I sat beside Jordan Blake, holding his hand, and I watched the process unfold like a door closing. Outside, Denise Caldwell tried to speak to me, and she said one line that sounded familiar. She said she did everything for me. I did not respond. I walked away with Haley Dawson, and I felt the quiet in my chest for the first time. The family reacted in mixed ways. Some were relieved, some were ashamed, and some stayed distant because they did not want to admit they believed her. I did not chase anyone. I learned that truth does not need persuasion. It needs time. After the case, my life did not become perfect. It became normal, and normal felt like a gift. I stopped checking my phone with dread. I stopped waiting for Denise Caldwell mood to determine my day. Haley Dawson and I met for coffee, not to whisper about her, but to talk like sisters. We compared memories, we corrected old stories, and we laughed at small things we never allowed ourselves to laugh at before. Jordan Blake and I settled into marriage gently, without drama, without fear. He did not treat me like a project. He treated me like a partner. We reviewed finances together, openly, and I realized how different money feels when it is not tied to shame. I also started therapy because numbers can prove theft, but they do not erase the training in your mind. Slowly, I learned to recognize guilt that was planted and fear that was conditioned. Each week, I felt lighter. If you are listening and your parent uses humiliation as love, please hear this. Love does not need an audience, and protection does not require secrets. Denise Caldwell tried to destroy me at my wedding because she thought public shame would keep me small. It did the opposite. It forced the truth into the light, and once the truth was visible, it could not be stuffed back into a drawer. Jordan Blake did not win by shouting. He won by documenting. Haley Dawson did not heal by forgiving quickly. She healed by choosing boundaries. And I did not reclaim my life by proving I was perfect. I reclaimed it by refusing to carry someone else's guilt. Some families will call you ungrateful when you stop being controllable. Let them. Your peace is worth more than their version of you.